I'm GM Blue, a Challenger player, and this video is part of a series where I talk about different Set 9 comps. Subscribe if you like this sort of content. Now, Freljord Aphelios is one of the first comps that was discovered in Set 9, and it's been relatively consistent. There's only 4 core units, which is the 3 Freljord units plus Aphelios, hence the name of the comp, and the remaining 4 units are relatively flexible, although there's one rule that you generally should follow, and that is you're looking to add 2 frontline units, or tanks, and then some combination of either damage dealers or utility units in the backline. In terms of your plus ones, you can go more vertical into the trait and add Deadeyes to your board, with Akshan and Urgot being common additions. You can add what I like to call carry packages, which are 2-unit combinations that can act as secondary carries to your Aphelios. So some of the more popular ones are Kai'Sa plus Yasuo, Lux plus Ahri, Gwen plus Aatrox, Zeri plus Senna. And then outside of these carry packages, these don't really have units that you can pair with them, but they can act as secondary carries as well. So you can play Azir and Heimerdinger. On the utility-based side of things, you can look to add a Soraka to your board or Ryze. And then lastly, on the frontline side, you're looking at Sion, K'Sante, Shen, Taric, Jarvan 4, and Nasus. Now this looks relatively complex, but all you need to understand is that you're looking to play the 4 units on the right side here, 2 of the frontline units at the top, and then some combination of these different carry and utility units on the bottom here. And I'm going to provide some examples to make this more clear. This is the standard level 8 board that you're going to end up playing the majority of the time, where you go more vertical into the Deadeye trait by adding Akshan and Urgot to your board, and then on the front line you add Shen plus Taric. This is a little bit more affordable than alternative options because you have 2 3 costs that you add, which is Akshan and Taric. Secondary carry items go on Urgot, and tank items go on Shen or Sejuani. In terms of variations on how you can play the comp, Sion tends to be better than both Shen and Taric at equivalent star levels. So if you find a Sion during your roll down and you only have Shen 1 or Taric 1, you can play Sion over either one of those units to upgrade the strength of your board. And in some cases, it might even be worth selling the Shen or Taric in order to go 9 faster. In addition, during your level 8 roll down, sometimes you're not going to be able to find Akshan or Urgot, or you're going to be able to find some of those other carries that I mentioned first, or there are some circumstances where you're going to have AP items, and this current board doesn't really have any good AP item holders, aside from Lissandra, which can be relatively lackluster. So you can drop Urgot plus Akshan, and then add one of those carry packages that I mentioned before. One of the more popular ones is Kai'Sa plus Yasuo, but this is not your only option. AP items would then go onto the Kai'Sa. You could add Lux plus Ahri, like I mentioned before. You could add Aatrox plus Gwen, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of different options for how you play the comp, especially if you randomly get AP items in the late game and you're not able to make good use of those in the 4 Deadeye version. You can just drop 2 of the Deadeyes and play some AP carry combination that will allow you to make use of those items. If you get a Deadeye spat, the most common thing to do is to drop the Akshan and play Urgot, and then you can Deadeye some unit on your board. It really doesn't tend to matter all that much. In fact, Lissandra ends up being the unit most of the time because a lot of times what people add is some utility unit like Heimer or Ryze or Azir, and all of these units are not particularly good with this Deadeye spat. You could also consider adding Senna to the board, which would actually be a little bit better with the Deadeye spat, and this would be your board if you get a Deadeye plus 1. Another option for the Deadeye plus 1 is if you're going for, in some cases, if you natural or if you're just going for it in general, Akshan 3, you can actually get Shurima on your board by having some of the frontline units that you play be Shurima units. So some examples here that you can do are Nasus or Renekton over one of these units, and then this would give you Bruiser. You would have 3 Shurima. Again, you really only are looking to do this if you have Akshan 3, and then eventually this Renekton would get replaced with K'Sante. And it's also worth noting that you could drop the Shen here for some utility units, since you already have 4 frontline units with Nasus, or Nasus, sorry, I gotta get better at pronouncing that, Cassante, Sejuani, and Lissandra. So there's a lot of different options when it comes to Freljord Aphelios. Let's talk about the early game real quickly here. So in the early game, there's a couple of different options. The main thing that you're looking to pick up, number one, you can play Bruiser frontline. That usually works quite well. So any of the Bruisers will work, because eventually you're going to find a Sejuani, and it will pair quite well with that. You can run a Bastion frontline, because you're eventually going to find either Taric or Shen, and those options work as well. And then there's also this pretty specific version that works quite well that I've seen be the most successful, which is Set, Aurelia, Warwick, Jhin, and then a Deadeye unit. So Akshan's the best one, but you can also play Ashe in this slot. And this level 5 board is relatively consistent and performs well in the early game. It can save you a lot of HP. And eventually you're going to be looking to drop, obviously, the Set, the Warwick, and the Aurelia as you get into the more traditional Bruiser/Bastion frontline that I talked about earlier in the video. But that's it for Freljord Aphelios. It is one of the stronger comps, and I think it's going to be one that's a staple through the entirety of Set 9. I'll see you for the next comp discussion.